Everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jennifer Morse. I'm a product evangelist here at MadCap Software. Today's presentation is going to be a review on the new features that we added in MadCap Flare 2018 and MadCap Central. Right about towards the end of May, we came out with a new release. So we're going to review those features. Did a webinar on this a couple weeks ago, so hopefully this will be new information for you that are on that have joined us today. But we do have a new feature that we're going to talk about in MadCap Central that we just added recently, and so we're going to go through that. We have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to jump right in. By the way, I'm also joined by my colleague Justin Bondoc. He's going to be helping us in part of the review process, so you'll be seeing him virtually in just a little bit. So before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items that I want to run through with everybody. So this webinar will be recorded. If you have to jump out early, not to worry. When this is done and everything's compiled, we're going to be sending a link out to everybody who registered so that you can watch the recording later. We also have a questions panel where if you have a question that pops into your head as I'm presenting, please use that little questions area in the GoToWebinar console. We'll do our best to answer them, and then we're going to spend some time at the end, if there's time, to go through some of those questions publicly and answers. And then whatever we don't have time to get to, just like a recording of the webinar, we're going to send out a question and answer document to everybody that signed up so that you can always review those later on and you'll be able to see what other folks asked as well. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So I'm going to review some of the new features. So I'm going to list them out and then we're going to walk through them in a bit more detail. And again, these enhancements were designed to help how your users interact with your documentation, and also some enhancements with how you as authors use Flare every day. So our agenda today, again, I'm going to just run through these quickly. We're going to talk about the new side navigation output that we have available in Flare. We're going to talk about Elasticsearch. Analyzers now included in Flare, so we'll take a look at that, which is really exciting. One of my favorite new features is the new cloud-based review workflow with MadCap Central. So that's really fun. We'll take a look at that. The new feature that we just added to Central just very recently is the ability to have host mapping or CNAME support, and we'll talk about that. And then if there's time, I want to touch quickly on some other features and usability improvements that we've included for Flare. So let's start with some of those. We're going to kind of go down the list. I'm going to start with more of the outwardly facing things that your end users may see in terms of improvements if you choose to use these things. So the first one I want to talk about is the side navigation output. So I'm going to put PowerPoint away temporarily here. I'm going to be jumping back in and out of it as we go, but let me put that away. And I want to pull up the side navigation output. So here's an output that I've created. This is a new output that we have in MadCap Flare. It's called Side Navigation. And with the addition of this new Side Navigation skin, what you can do here is you're able to produce the same frameless, modern look of a top navigation output, except you can have the table of contents positioned on the left or the right side of the screen. This lets you have a structure similar to the older tripane format, if you remember, but this doesn't have any frames. This is just a flat page. So this can be a really beneficial option for those of you if you want to move to a more modern or a frameless design and still have it be HTML5, and you like the look of the table of contents or your navigation down one side. Maybe you have a really long TOC, and just for whatever reason, it may be difficult to re-architect that table of contents in top nav, because remember, in top navigation, you only have so much real estate up here in the header area. So side navigation is a little bit more forgiving, since you have room for a much longer table of contents here. And if it gets really, really long, then of course you get a scroll bar. So for those that have a top level TOC that's really long, this is a really nice option. This side navigation, and I'll just kind of show you here so we could navigate through this particular TOC this way, much like you would expect in a traditional tripane outlook or output. Now, the side navigation also supports auto syncing of your table of contents, which can be helpful for a couple reasons. If I were in this particular topic here, let me take a look at what's new. And here I've got an example where maybe I'm jumping to another place in my documentation. What happens is when I click that link, you can see that my TOC synchronizes and it opens up and expands on the topic where I am. So it just helps the user as they're jumping around your documentation. If you're referencing them around, it gives them a sense of where they are, where they've been and where they can go within your navigation. And it's also really handy if we were looking at this on a mobile device. Again, this output is responsive. It's available responsive out of the box. We tried to make it easy for you. So if we were looking at this information on a smaller screen size, let me see if I can mimic this real quick. Maybe make my browser smaller here. And we'll make it even a little bit smaller. We'll see that we get that table of contents. If I was on the home screen, for example, we can see this is all responsive. But if I were to navigate to that topic, if I go to what's new again, and I click on links and footnotes, okay, well, it jumps me there, which is great. But if I were looking at this on a phone, if I were to invoke my table of contents, we can see that links and lists and links and footnotes is actually expanded and we're there. In previous versions, by default, we didn't get that. It just would kind of look like this. You could still invoke the TOC, but you wouldn't know where you were in the hierarchy. So that's a nice usability improvement. Now, in Flare, to set this up, you want to adjust a couple settings in your skin. So I'm going to switch over to Flare. I'm going to pull up my project here, and we're going to take a look at this. So here I am in my Flare project, and I've built this side navigation output. And what you want to do is you're going to go into your skin, and you want to go ahead and make a couple of settings. So I've got a skin here already called Side Navigation. So I'll double click it, and it's going to open in the skin editor. And this is where you're going to want to adjust. If you're doing that side navigation, what you want to pay attention to is this main menu position. This is what lets you control quickly what side your table of contents is going to be on. So right now it's set to the left, but as you notice, I can choose the right if I want, and it gives me a little preview. Or, I could put it on the top if I want to. It's not really side navigation at that point, it's more top nav. But this is where we can tell the skin where that table of contents needs to go. If you want to have that syncing capability with the TOC, this is where you'll check that box to enable that to happen. Now, we included a new project template in Flare with all of this side navigation in place. So you can use it right out of the box and customize it further to meet your own needs. And there's a couple ways to get to the side navigation template. If I look at the start page, if I was just opening up Flare here for the first time, if I browse to the templates, you can see we've added this new project template here. Again, it's not going to be the be-all, end-all in terms of look and feel and design for everybody, but the goal with this template is just to kind of get you further along. So you can customize your logo, the colors, maybe the drop-down icons for your TOC. We're just there to get you going with this template. If you already have a project going and you don't want to create a brand new one, you can also add a side navigation skin. We've put one in there. So if you don't have a side navigation skin in your project, you can right-click on the skins folder, you can add a skin, and we do have a factory template for the side navigation skin. Again, it's going to look very similar to this sort of darkish gray here, but you can change all of those things if you want to meet your own corporate branding needs. Now, speaking of side nav, both the top nav and the side nav headers, if I'll go back to it here, this header area up here, that's been encapsulated in a Flexbox. So Flexbox is a layout module in CSS3, and the purpose of it is it's designed to improve the way items align in the container that they're in. So it just allows for more flexibility for placing things in the top nav or side nav skins in that header area up there. So that's another improvement to the skin. All right, so we talked about side nav. Let's move on and talk about Elasticsearch. Now, in previous versions of Flare, you had the choice between using the default MadCap search out of the box and also replacing that MadCap search with Google search for your online help. Now we've got a third option called Elasticsearch. Now this is a new search experience you can enable for your end users. It can be used in top nav outputs, it can be used in the side nav output, and also skinless sites. Now, just to clarify, Elasticsearch isn't anything that MadCap made. This is a powerful, scalable, open source search engine that lots of organizations use to enhance the user search experience. And it's often the backbone search for many e-commerce and sites and business sites that you and I all use every day. So, and it happens to be pretty cool. So we'll try it here. I have this output that I've been playing with. here, and I've got Elasticsearch enabled, and I'll talk about where you do that, but I just want to show you what it feels like initially. If I were to search this help, I'm going to go ahead and type in a word. Watch what's happening as I start typing in. I'm starting to type in the word image. Notice some things happening here. I start to get some suggestions. You can see here we've got some results. These are actually search results that I and others have done in the past. So we can actually see searches that other people have done. So it's kind of like when you go to Google, you start typing in a word and you start getting these predictive results based on what other people have searched on or what you've searched on. That's what this is. We also get results for content that's actually in my project. So it's actually looking at the topics themselves and suggesting results. So if I go ahead and I'll search, and I get my I'll get my result that I want. A couple other things that you'll notice. I'm going to go ahead. So sometimes we go fast when we're searching, right? I do this. I don't know about you. I do this in Google all the time. I misspell a word when I'm trying to find something. So I'm going to purposely misspell this word. So when we use Elasticsearch, we also get this "did you mean" behavior. In other words, it's sort of thinking, well, I think you meant image, and it's actually going to show us some results based on that. So we get that fuzzy matching, that "did you mean" capability with Elasticsearch, which is kind of cool. So if you misspell it, it will suggest these things. It also searches and retrieves non-XHTML files as well, so things like PDF docs, Office documents, and if those are published as part of your doc set or your entire project, the search can display those results as well. So if you notice here, I had a PDF in my project that I compiled, and it actually indexed that PDF. It actually returned it as a result because the word image is in there. So if you want to search and retrieve non-topic files, this is a good way to do it. Now, I do want to point out there's a couple things you got to do in Flare in order for this to happen. It's not very complicated, but there's just a couple steps. So I want to show you where to tinker with this in Flare. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up Flare again. And we're going to go to the target file. So there's two kind of gears that you need to think about. There's the target file and also a destinations file that we need to be thinking about. So I'll go ahead and open up my target. And in my target file, down here, we've got this search tab. And what you're going to do is this is where you're going to tell Flare what search engine you want to use. So we've got the choice. Before, again, we had MadCap Search and Google Search. Now with Flare 2018, we have Elasticsearch as an option. And when you choose Elasticsearch, you get all of these options that show up. Now, the defaults work great. I mean, you can keep all of these here and not do anything, which is what I have done. But you can always change things. I don't have the time to go through all of these, but we have a topic in our help documentation that goes through all of these items in a bit more detail and tells you what they do. But I'm just going to keep the defaults for now. So that's the first place you want to go. Into the target that you want to use Elasticsearch, go to the search tab, tell it Elasticsearch, and fill in some of these things if you want. The next thing you want to think about is the destination. I do want to point out that what's cool about Elasticsearch, you can build this locally and test this locally. You don't necessarily have to publish it to a server in order to try all of this stuff. So you can build it locally. So I can build this right now and try the Elasticsearch, which is actually really handy. I don't have to configure anything. But you're most likely going to want to publish your content to a web server so that your end users can access it. So if you decide you want your end users to experience Elasticsearch rather than the default MadCap search or Google search, you're going to want to publish your content to your primary web server. And that can be wherever you want. That's going to be the location that's going to serve up your content to your end users. You're also going to want to have, let me open up my publishing destinations here so we can talk about this. So I've got two examples here. Here's my primary web server. Okay, so you configure this however you want to transfer the files. You're going to have to get some information like the host name and maybe some credentials, however you decide you want to do it, but you get your destination set up. Okay, so that's done. You're going to want to have a second destination file that also has your Elasticsearch server information because you need to install the Elasticsearch service on a server. So I just created a second publishing destination. I called it Elasticsearch. And once you get that service installed, you're going to get a search destination URL. So that's what this is here. So you've got your two destinations. And that's it. In our target file, if we go back to our target, when we publish this information, we'll go to our publishing tab. You'll choose the primary web server or wherever you want this particular target to go. And here's where you'll say, okay, for this destination, for this output here, I want it to use Elasticsearch. So once you create this Elasticsearch destination, this will be available here to choose. So that's really all you do. And so you publish and then you're off to the races. And of course, there's a lot, if you want to read about this in more detail, we do have a lot of information about setting this up in the help file. And of course, our support team's always here to help if need be. So I would recommend really to determine the type of search that's really best for you and your end users, generate some different outputs, try it out, use the different methods, perform some different searches, see what you like best. And the good news, again, is that you can test this Elasticsearch locally. And if you like it, well, then maybe you make the case to get it configured on your server internally. And again, the Elasticsearch service is free. It's nothing you have to pay for. It's available out of the box with Flare. So that's kind of the big major outwardly facing things. We talked about side navigation and we talked about Elasticsearch. And again, just to kind of wrap up the Elasticsearch thing, some benefits that it gives. It does give you that predictive search results. So you get those personal searches, you get global searches in terms of, what other keywords have people searched on? And you get that autocomplete functionality based on files that are published. You also get that did you mean functionality. And as I mentioned, Elasticsearch is a free platform and it's also ad-free. So, before, excuse me, before Elasticsearch, we had the MadCap and the Google search as an option. And Google search is also free, very powerful search engine. But the sticky bit about the Google search is that you may get ads in your results. That's how Google makes their money. So even though that's a free site search, you may get ads in your search results, and you may not necessarily want that in your documentation. A nice thing about Elasticsearch, as I mentioned, it can be tested locally. It's designed to scale as well. We can also search and retrieve non-XHTML files, which could be handy if you want your users to get maybe PDFs or Office documents that you're publishing as part of your documentation. And the other big difference between if you compare Elasticsearch and Google search is that with Elasticsearch, your content can be private. You can publish your content. This primary web server could be, behind lock and key. People may have to authenticate in order to even get to the content. And you can do that if you want to use Elasticsearch. And you can do that with MadCap search as well. Google search, however, you can't. Google has to see your information. And that's kind of can be a sticking point for some folks. So if you want your content to be private and you want to have this search experience, Elasticsearch could be an interesting way to go. So kind of some benefits there. So again, major customer facing stuff in terms of how your end users look at information. We got the side nav and also Elasticsearch. So let's transition a little bit. And I want to talk about, let's kind of turn inward. Let's talk about some improvements to Flare and also Central that'll hopefully affect you all as authors. So one of the things I mentioned is that we folded in MadCap Analyzer into Flare. Up here on the review tab, you'll notice there's a new ribbon option called Analysis. So we basically took all of Analyzer and we folded it into the Flare UI. So you no longer have to have a separate tool in order to run and fix issues in your Flare project. So again, if you have a Flare 2018, you don't have to buy Analyzer anymore. I mean, it's in there for you, and it's a little bit more in your face. And if you're not using Analyzer, I encourage you to try it. It does a lot of amazing things. So I'll just do a quick summary here. I pulled up the analysis. I'm going to just run a quick summary. This is just a quick scan of my project. And this is a wonderful thing to do maybe prior to publishing. Run a quick analyzer scan, because this shows you a lot of interesting things. For example, you can really quickly see, well, I've got, red stuff. That's stuff you really need to pay attention to. Broken links, you don't want to build or publish anything with broken links. So Analyzer can show you real quick what links are broken. If you double click this, it'll let you fix these issues right away. Now, you could run a report in previous versions of Flare if you didn't have Analyzer, but this lets you find and fix these things right away. Another great thing that we can take a look at here, Analyzer is great for finding unused information. I mean, it does a whole host of things, and I don't have time to go into all of its features. We have some great webinars on it, but just a couple things that I like. I love the broken links feature. I love this unused content files report. This shows us, let me just open up this guy real quick. This shows us a list of files in our project that are not being used. They're essentially sitting there taking up space. Nothing's linking to them. Nothing's linking away from them. They're just like old clothes sitting in your closet taking up room that you don't use anymore. And you can look at a ton of unused files. You can use unused content files. Maybe just you want to filter and look at unused images. You know, do you want to use this to kind of clean house a little bit? So you can select things that are just taking up space. You could do a multi-select and get rid of them in one fell swoop. So it's a way to find things quickly and take action. Another thing you may want to pay attention to, you may have some variable suggestions here. So variable suggestions, these are things where you've got text, hand-coded text in your files that match variables in your project. You know, Flare is a great single sourcing tool, and this is a wonderful way to ensure that you're using as much of those reusable bits as possible. So this lets you find areas and change them or find text that matches variables. I've only got one here, but I could multi-select and actually apply the suggestion. So it'll take the hard-coded text and apply it to a variable so that you don't have to manually do that. So it's a big time saver. So if you're not using the analysis, definitely check it out. It offers a lot of great functionality. Okay, so the next thing I want to move to now is the review and contribution workflow with Central. Really fun stuff. So with this new workflow, the whole review process is going to be much simpler and much easier, since all of the reviews and the contributions are going to be done in the cloud using MadCap Central. So if you have a MadCap Central subscription, this new workflow lets you add non-Flare users, in other words, your subject matter experts, to your Central license. And now you can then collaborate with those subject matter experts, as well as other Flare authors, by sending topics and snippets for review right from Flare. Now, if you don't have a subscription of Central yet, well, then you can always try this out for free. And I'll touch a bit about the trial again towards the end. But before we jump into all this fun new stuff, I just want to review quickly for those of you who may not be familiar with what Central is. So let me just pull up PowerPoint. A couple things I want to walk through here. So what is MadCap Central? Well, MadCap Central is a cloud-based platform that we built, and the goal is to help you plan and help you track, manage certain processes, content files, Flare content files, and the teams that are at the heart of your organization and responsible for producing documentation. And why did we build this thing? Well, we've been at this for a while now, and for years, Flare users have been letting us know about problems they've been running into with their documentation, things like workflow challenges, technological challenges, and so on. And we know that not all of these problems are things that Flare can solve on its own. So let's just talk about some of these things. So for first one, source control. Teams of authors and even lone authors need an easy-to-use version control solution that can be used. Maybe you need a better source control solution than what you have in place. And sometimes the thought of getting help from your IT team or your developers to get everything set up and configured can feel a little bit daunting. You may not have those resources readily available to do that. This is an area where Central can really help. With a couple of clicks of a button, Flare authors have instant source control and can easily collaborate with one another. You can be self-reliant to get it set up yourself. Another thing is task management. Now, we've seen authors make use of all kinds of things to keep track of the things that they have to do to manage documentation. When we built this thing out a couple years ago, or while it was in development, we looked at over the shoulders of lots of folks. We saw, well, how do people work? How do they keep track of all the stuff they have to do? And we saw some amazing things. We saw big, scary looking spreadsheets that people maintained with percentages and manually tracked files and notes and things that sometimes worked and sometimes it didn't. We saw whiteboards with sticky notes all over the place where you move the sticky notes. We saw people that just had all this tribal knowledge lodged in their brains. And so, and so on. So what Central offers is this easy to use task board and also project checklist to keep you on track and get rid of all of these disparate tools and methodologies to keep track of everything. Another thing, browser-based collaboration and review. This is a biggie. Getting subject matter experts involved is an area that's been really challenging for Flare authors. Now, we offered MadCap Contributor as a way to fold in subject matter experts into the review process, but we've heard over the years that it was a bit challenging to get subject matter experts to install and use another piece of software. Let's be honest, your subject matter experts, well, they come in lots of different skill sets and like to use different types of platforms. And so you may have some that can, code directly in Notepad, and others may have a hard time opening up Microsoft Word. So everybody's a little bit different. And even though Contributor was designed as a very scaled down processor, and it was fairly easy to use, it was still different. People still had to install something. If you had subject matter experts that were all on Macs, well, then it made it that much more challenging. Well, now we've done away with the need to install any kind of desktop tools. This new review workflow using MadCap Central means that your subject matter experts can review content in a browser. So we're platform independent now. And now we can edit content using a simplified, lightweight editor. So we keep the power of Flare as a desktop tool for the content authors, the main authors of content. And now we can pair it with an easy to use browser-based editor for contributions and review. Just real quick here, build management. This is another big challenge that we hear that users want to have some help with. I mean, users oftentimes want to have a programmatic build process in place. And when I say users, I should say Flare authors want to have a programmatic build process in place. They don't want to oftentimes have to purchase additional build servers internally, or maybe purchase additional build licenses of Flare to support this. Central makes this really easy to do with a couple clicks. Authors with the appropriate permissions in Central can set these programmatic builds to happen whenever they want, and you can do this on your own. You don't need to, utilize the command line at all to make this stuff work. We have a really easy to use UI to make it easy for you. And the last thing is hosting. If you're a Flare user, it's really simple to build your outputs. You click a button that says build and you've got your output file. But then what? Maybe you need to get your beautiful HTML5 site online, or all your PDFs distributed to your users. And sometimes Flare authors find that process time consuming. They may not have internal resources to get a staging and a web server set up quickly. Central offers a very easy and inexpensive way to stage and host your content for your end users to view the published output. So what we were seeing is that single authors and also teams of authors were using lots of different processes rather than being more integrated in their approach to documentation and content management. So our whole goal with Central is to offer this unified cloud platform with features that help lone authors, teams of authors, and now, of course, the folks supporting the content developers to manage the technical documentation process as a secure, managed service. So that's what it is and why we built it. Now let's take a look at this review process and let's have a little bit of fun. So I'm going to put PowerPoint away again, and I am going to pull up Central. So here we are. Now I've already logged into Central. I've got a license, and I'm all set up. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to get users invited to our license that can help us with the reviews. So I'm logged in, I'm on the home screen, I see my name, I've got these instructions that say add home dashboard widgets. But if we take a look at the users page over here on the left, you'll notice in my license, I've got a number of folks invited here. And I've got some as authors, these are some of my Flare authors, and I've also got some folks here as subject matter experts. So this is where you're gonna wanna invite folks to your license as either one of those two things. So one thing you'll notice is we've got this new reviews page here on the left, and we're going to take a look at that. And if you've got the right permissions in Central, you can invite folks to your license. So the way you do it is you click the plus button, and you're going to put in their first name, the last name, and the email. And then this is where you're going to choose what are they going to be. Are they going to be a full author, meaning are they going to have access to all of the functional areas here on the left? And are they generally a Flare user? Do they need to do builds and get content in and out of Central? Or are they just going to be a subject matter expert? So you can choose how they want to, what kind of person they want to be. So then what you'll do is you'll put their information in, you'll hit send invitation. When you invite somebody, either as an author or a subject matter expert, that person's going to get an email that says, click here to complete your activation. create your password. And when they do that, they're going to be logged into Central as a user here. You'll see them, there'll be a row with their name, and you'll see the status as active. So I've got all of my users invited here, and we're all ready to go. We've also got some projects synced in Central. Now, Flare authors can send topics out to SMEs and other Flare authors for review once Central can see our project. I won't have time to go through that process, and feel free to reach out to me if anybody wants to see that at a later date. But we have some great documentation on that. But what we're going to do is we're going to send topics out from Flare so that all of the reviews, the contribution, and the commenting is done in our lightweight editor in Central. So again, the fun thing here is that unlike Contributor, there's no need to install anything. So let's give this a go. So I've got all my users. I've got a project synced up here already, so Central's already seen it. I took a couple minutes before the webinar started to do that, so we didn't have to spend any time there. But I'm going to go ahead and pull up my Flare project here. Oh, it's on my other monitor. Let me drag this over. Okay, so here I am in Flare. I've got this project. I've got it synced up in Central. I know I've successfully done that because I can see this information over here on the right. I've written this topic. It's now time to involve some other folks to help me write or review this information. So the way we're going to do this is I've got my topic up in the review tab here. I've got this option to send for review. And again, I'm already logged into Central. I've already synced this project up there. So I'll send this topic for review. And we'll notice that we're presented with all of the files. Now, I've only got basic steps selected. That's why it's presented here. If we want to add additional files to send out for review, we can use the little plus button, and we can add additional files in our project if we want. A couple of different ways too. If you had your Content Explorer exposed and you're toggling, you hit the little button that says Toggle Show Files. You can multi-select a bunch of topics from there and send for review. So there's a few ways to send topics out for review, but just keeping it simple, I'll just send one. I do want to point out though, when you send a topic, sometimes topics have other stuff in them more than just plain text. They may have snippets in them. They may have, images and variables and things. I do want to point out all of that content is going to travel along with it. This topic here doesn't have any snippets in it, but if it did, those snippets would be included automatically as files, as their separate files to be sent out for review. If you think that's going to be too much for your reviewer and you want them to see the text, but you don't want them to edit those snippet files, you can always select those snippets that travel along with the topic by default, select them, and then hit this little X button here to remove them. The good news is if you send a topic out without its associated snippets, the snippets are still going to render in the editor. We still can see them, so we know from context what's going on, but your reviewer won't be able to edit the snippet file. So that's your choice. Down here is where we're going to send the file to Central. This is the old way. This is the contributor way. We're not going to do that because Central is way more fun. So I've selected this radio button here, and we're going to click Next. And then what's going to happen is we're going to be presented with all of our users in the license. So it's going to do a quick sync with Central, and I'm going to give it a little bit of time because I don't think what you're seeing is quite what I'm seeing. Looks like we have a little bit of a lag with GoToWebinar. So I'm going to just pause for just a moment. Okay. Well, the good news is I already sent this up for review, so we'll see this. So what's going to happen is you're going to be presented with a list of all of your reviewers. Let me try this again. Nope, we don't want to do it again. So it's already been sent. Anyway, so what you would be presented with is a list of all of your users in your Central license. And from there, you can choose who's going to review that file. So all of your Flare authors, all of your subject matter experts, they're all going to be available to you to send for review because you can send this file out to review to multiple people. When you click send, they're going to get an email automatically that says, you've been summoned. You've got files for review. Click here to view them. And if one of your reviewers happens to be that subject matter expert role in Central, what they're going to do is they'll click that link in their email and they're going to come right into Central. Remember, they've already been invited. They've already authenticated. So when they log in, they're going to see this. So Tim was one of the subject matter experts in my license. So I'm going to put my SME hat on for just a moment. I'm going to cheat. I've logged in as Tim as well, so we can see the subject matter expert experience here. So Tim got that email. He clicked the link to log in, and this is what he sees. He gets some instructions here that say, review your topic, select a file from the left to get started. So we see here on the left, we've got a pending tab. We've also got a tab called Submitted and Archive, which we'll take a look at. But these are all of the files that he's been asked to review, or that I have been asked for review. So I'll click on Basic Steps here on the left. Oh, also notice that the only thing I have access to, because remember, I was invited as a subject matter expert role in Central, the only thing I have access to are reviews right here. I don't have access to all of the other functional areas in Central. My only job here is to review content. So I'll click Basic Steps, and it's going to actually open in what's called our lightweight editor. So let's talk about what's going on. We wanted to keep this very, very simple. We want our reviewers to focus on content development, the formatting, the conditions, all the styling information. That's your job as authors. We want folks to give us their feedback and review and collaborate on this thing. So we kept the formatting very, very basic toolbar up here. I can start typing in here. So if I am, reviewing this and I need to start putting some content in, I can start typing. So I can type the word basic. Notice that all of my changes are tracked over here in this gutter area on the right-hand side. Maybe I need to add something else here, more info, more information. Maybe I need to add really basic formatting stuff. If I'm looking at this, I may say, well, this, maybe this is something that should be a heading 2. I'll go ahead and, make that a heading 2. So all of my changes are tracked. I can also add comments. So I'm looking at this going, okay, well, this is good information. I just want to make a comment here. I can select this guy and I can say, this is for Justin. Can you fill this in? So what's happening is, because we've sent multiple people for review, notice over here on the right-hand side, we can see who's reviewing this file. As a subject matter expert, I can see who the author was, who sent it out for review, who else is involved in reviewing this file. So Justin is a full Flare author. He's more than just a subject matter expert in Central, because again, we can invite those folks to review in the editor as well. So because he's more of an expert on the server configuration, I'm going to let him do that. So I put in a little comment there. Now, Justin is logged in. Remember, he was notified that he's got files to review. Look at what's happening here. He's in here actually editing this file at the same time. This content is coming from Justin. He's logged in. He's been asked to review this file, and he's editing this. So we can have multiple people in here at the same time. All of our content is being auto-saved. So unlike contributor, if you've got multiple people that want to see this thing, you don't have to save the file as the first person to review it and start daisy chaining it around the circle for others to see as well. We can all see what's happening at the same time. We can all be in the same file at the same time, and all of our changes are tracked here. So when you're done making all of your edits and your reviews, what you're going to want to do is, all you have to do is click Submit. So when we click Submit, notice that our review status changes a little bit here. So I've submitted my changes. My review status went from open to complete. And this is actually nice. At any point in time, even as the author, I could log in and see this file and see the raw edits in Central, which I'll do in just a moment. And I'll be able to see at any time who still has it open, who's completed their reviews. Is there somebody that I need to give a gentle nudge to and ask them to please check this thing out and submit some comments or some feedback? We know who's on top of it and who's lagging behind. So I'll go ahead and let me refresh this page, because Justin's probably completed his reviews. Yep, there, he's done. When the last person clicks that submit button, and when the last person who's been invited to review clicks submit, the author gets an email that says, you have completed reviews, click here to view them. So I'm going to put Tim away, and I'm going to show you what I would see if I clicked on that email. So I just got an email that said reviews are done, click here. When I go to the reviews page, so here I'm logged in as me now. When I go to the reviews page, I've got one extra thing here. I've got sent. Because I'm a Flare author, I can actually send files out for review. I can be asked to review things, so I don't have anything in my pending because nobody asked me to review anything. But here I can see the files that I've sent for review that are still open in this review state. So I can click on Basic Steps, and I can see this file with all of its raw edits in here. And so at any point in time, this is where I could log in. I may even need to come in here and add some content. I don't have to do it back in Flare. Even I can come in here and add stuff. So maybe I'll add an exclamation point. All of my content is tracked. But eventually we're going to have to get these changes back into Flare and part of our single source of truth. So everybody's made their edits, everybody's put in their comments. It's time to incorporate these changes into Flare. So that's actually done back in Flare as well. But again, if we submit anything, even as a Flare author or as somebody who's been asked to review, If we submit something, we can still go into if you're an author, you can go to the Sent tab and view it. But if you're a subject matter expert or somebody who was asked for review, you could go to that Submitted tab and still make any last minute changes. Just because you click that green Submit button, it's okay. If you forgot something, you can still go in and make edits. Your changes will be tracked over here on the right-hand side. But eventually we got to fold everything in, and we're going to do that back in Flare. So back to Flare we go. And what you're going to want to do is pull up your file reviews. Now, if it's not open, you just go to the Review tab and you select the file reviews. And what it's going to do is Flare sensed that something was different. It did a quick sync with Central and pulled those submitted files back in. So here we can see, here's that basic steps topic that I sent out for review. It's still in that submitted state. I'm actually looking at the raw, the one that I sent before went out for review right here. Now, when it's in that submitted state, anybody can use that lightweight editor to make changes, but we have to cut the cord and fold those changes back in. So if I double click on this file to start getting those reviews, Flare's going to prompt me to close the file. So I'll click OK. And what's going to happen is I see the raw edits now of those reviews and those contributions. And the status of the file now says closed. What that means is if we were to look at that file in Central, it's not going to be in that submitted state anymore. If I go back over here, it's not, if I refresh the page, it's not here. It's not in my Sent tabs. It's actually in the archive. So here's that basic steps. You can see I've done this a couple times. So here's that basic steps topic that was just closed out. We can see the raw edits here, but it's read-only. We can't make any changes to it. So we got to make those changes in Flare. So now I can come through and I can accept and reject these changes if I want to. I can accept them one by one. You know, I can come here and do what I need to do, or I can use this guy up here and I can accept all or reject all, whatever I want to do. So I'll accept all those changes. Annotations, they stay put. You could do what you want to do with these things. Somebody may give you some feedback. You may take that feedback, do what you have to do, and get rid of the annotation, or you can leave it in. That's your call. They don't get published as part of the output, so you can choose what you want to do. So I'll go ahead and delete that because I don't want to see it. The last thing I want to do is accept the file. This is going to replace that one that we sent out with this newly reviewed one. And if we take a look at it, we'll open it up. And now we've replaced that old one with the new one. Now in Flare, we can edit this as authors and we can do what we need to do and commit those changes to Central, because I'm using Central as my source control here. So I would be able to synchronize my changes with Central so that all of the authors could continue to work on this file. So that's how easy it is to get content from Flare up to Central and then back in. So a couple things to remind you. So again, some of the benefits to this, we don't have to download and install any desktop software anymore. We can just use a browser. We have multi-user editing. In other words, we can have multiple folks in this file at the same time. We don't have to daisy chain files around to see each other's reviews and comments. We've got a simplified review-only interface. So a lightweight version of that editor means that everything is much more streamlined. You only see the options and the features that are relevant to the review process. Changes that we make in that editor, well, they're being auto-saved as you work. So all of the changes are also automatically tracked so that the original author can easily locate those edits for approval or rejection in Flare. And so again, just as a reminder, if you don't yet have a trial of Central yet, if this is the first time you're seeing this, or you think, gosh, this is something I want to try, you can test it for free. We have a 30-day trial available. And when you're trialing Central, you can invite any number of authors and subject matter experts to that license to test it out. And if you have any questions about doing that, feel free to get in touch with me or your sales rep. We'd be happy to help there. So that's the review workflow. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is host mapping, which is the newest Central feature that we've just added at the beginning of June. Just do a quick time check. Okay. Until now, until we released this host mapping feature, let me go back to Central real quick. And I'm going to go into a project and we're going to take a look at this in a little bit more detail. So I'm opening up a project now that I've synced to Central, and it's got a little bit more stuff going on, so it's going to make a little bit more sense. And I'm going to go into the build management. So Central is actually seeing this, is synced with this project, or I've synced this project with Central, I can say, and it's actually looking at the targets in this particular project. And I've built these two targets now in Central. So until now, if we look at these two targets, both of these two targets I've built and I've set to live. And if we look down here, it's a little bit hard to see. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger just temporarily here. And let me see if we can make this a little bit more visible. Down here at the bottom, because I've set these two builds to live, which is this little setting here, and that's just done by right click and set to live, or there's a toolbar button that allows you to set content to live. Central assigns you this URL. And we can change parts of this URL, or we up until we had host mapping capabilities, we could change parts of it. We could change this part of the URL. We could give it, a special version number if we wanted to, but we couldn't change this MC output. So the minute we set content to live, again, you do get this vanity URL. This is what people will use to access this. In fact, if I click this button here, it'll open in a new tab, and we'll take a look at this staged output. And you can see that this is what we've got. So you may be looking at this going, okay, well, that's fine, but I want to use my own company domain. My company right here, it's called PE Team. Well, I want my domain, or I want my URL to say help.peteam.com or docs.peteam.com. So you want to have that more branded and customized to meet your corporate needs. So again, we couldn't change it before, but now we can. So if you prefer to use your own company's URL, we have the option of using a custom domain. The output will still be hosted on MadCap Central, but the URL that you give to your end users will be your own company's domain instead of showing this MC output thing here. So that's what that would look like. Now, you're going to have to do a couple things in order to get this to work. You're going to want to ask your IT team to go to your DNS provider and create what's called a CNAME. And that CNAME is going to point to a special site. So I'm going to pull up PowerPoint. I'm going to give you a visual of what this is. This is all very well documented in the help, but just to kind of show you. So this is from our documentation. This is what you're going to want to do. So this is an example from GoDaddy. So first of all, we put in the type here. It's called CNAME. And now you may be able to do this yourself, or you may have to work with one of your folks in IT to do this for you. But in the host field, you're going to type your subdomain. So if I want if I wanted to say help.peteam.com, I'm going to put help in here. Then you're going to point it to this web address right here. And that's it. You save your changes. And once you do that, what you're going to do in Central, so I'll come back over here to Central, and again, you're going to have the right permissions to do this in Central, because Central is very permissions-based, which is good. And you'll come up to your name, you'll come up to server settings, and there's a tab here called URL. And this is where we can tell Central what URL or what vanity URL we want to use. So this is the one you get out of the box. So this is what we're getting already. So we've customized the front part of this. And then of course I've put in a custom vanity URL for this piece of it here, so it's versioned. But I want to use my host one. So I'm going to choose this one because I want it to say help.peteam.com. Now, I'm not actually going to do this. I just want to show you the steps. But what you'll do is after you got that set up with your DNS provider, you can hit validate. The last thing you're going to do is you're going to choose whether you want to use a MadCap generated SSL or if you want to provide your own. And so that's up to you. Your IT person may want you to use your own SSL certificate, and that's fine. If that's the case, you choose this radio button, you browse to that PFX file, and that's it. You hit the process button and then you close. When you build your output, it's going to have your custom domain. It's going to say help.peteam.com instead of having this MC output. So that's how we would replace the central given URL or the vanity URL with your own hosted one. So that's something that a lot of folks have been asked for because it just helps with consistency. It helps with branding, and it's quite easy to do. And again, we've got a lot of documentation in the help that shows that. Okay, so we've talked about a lot. As we're coming towards the end of the hour, I just want to review a couple other improvements. So let me pull up PowerPoint again. And this picture, I actually grabbed this from the documentation. So if you want to see more about this, go to the central documentation, go to the What's New tab, and you'll see all of this information about host mapping support and some steps on how to do it. So you can always get more information there. So a couple other improvements I want to touch on quickly. We do have SharePoint 2016 and 365 support. So if you use those two platforms, Flare will integrate with those versions. We also have support for Microsoft TFS 2018. We've made some Salesforce Connect enhancements, and some of those enhancements include support for Salesforce Lightning. So eventually we're all, if you've moved to Salesforce Lightning and you're publishing to Salesforce directly, we support that now. Eventually we're all going to have to do that. But if you've already done it, then we do support that platform. And we also support publishing multilingual projects from Flare too. So if you have multiple languages, if you're translating your source project into other languages and that content needs to get published to Salesforce as well, we do support that now. And we also have a couple other find and replace enhancements. In fact, in the last minute, maybe I'll just pull up Flare and show you a couple things. Let me pull up Flare real quick and I will show you. Let me get rid of some of these windows here because there's a lot. So what I want to do is in the home ribbon here, we've got this find and replace file. So that's always been here, but a couple enhancements to this find and replace guy over here in the top. So I'm going to invoke him over here. So this should look pretty familiar where you can, find and replace things. But if I were to try and find a file, if I typed in the word ipsum, for example, and if I find all, let's see here. And if I select find all here, so I'm finding the word ipsum. Notice that down here in the bottom, I get these results. And oops, I didn't choose it. Well, so notice here that I've got this ipsum showing up in lots of topics here. Maybe you only want to see the first result per line. What you can do now is you can choose this first line per result and hit find all. So instead of showing 9, our results are now 4. It's just showing the first instance of that word in that file. So if you're looking for a particular word or something and it's showing up in 100 topics, or in the same topic, I should say 100 times, this just reduces our results. So you can still see everything, but this was a request that we've had from a lot of folks. So we gave you the ability to filter and just show the first result per line. The other thing you can do, if I open up a TOC, I'll open up a TOC from the left, you can actually drag the results from this find results window, and you can actually drag it into your table of contents. So if this is something I needed, if I was looking for it, I could click and drag this guy into my table of contents and put it wherever I want in the TOC hierarchy. So that's a new feature as well. So a couple little enhancements there, little small things, but I think, for those of you who use find and replace a lot, hopefully you'll find that useful. Okay, so we're coming upon the end. I'm hoping we've got some questions here, and we do. So before we get to those questions, let me just get that available. I just want to go over a couple of slides with you all. So I just want to remind everybody, so we do have a promotion going on right now. If this MadCap Central review process looks interesting to you, we have a great promotion going on for MadCap Flare and MadCap Central. You can save on a subscription bundle. So you can save over $200 on a MadCap Flare and a MadCap Central subscription. So what it includes is a subscription to MadCap Flare. It includes a single central author seat, a subject matter expert seat, and of course, it's going to include platinum level maintenance across the board. So it's a great opportunity to save a little bit of money. And once you have your central license, it does scale. You can always try it with one and then add additional users if you want to as well. So get in touch with us if you have questions about that. Talk to your sales rep, and we'd be happy to help. And that's a limited time offer. So definitely get in touch with us if you have questions there. I also want to remind everybody that we have our Mad Camp coming up July 24th through the 27th. It's a wonderful way to get that hands-on over-the-shoulder training here in our offices in beautiful downtown La Jolla. La Jolla is gorgeous in July, and hopefully you can join us if you haven't. So for details on that, contact your sales rep, or you can email sales@madcapsoftware.com. So we do have that class coming up, just a few spots left there. And then the final reminder, we just coming off the heels of a super fun conference here in San Diego. We had MadWorld here in San Diego just at the beginning of June. We have our MadWorld Europe conference coming up in Prague, September 11th through the 14th. So there is a registration discount where you can save up to $200. Again, it was so much fun to do this in San Diego, and we're so excited to take it to Prague this year as well. So we hope you can join us for that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over just in the last couple minutes here and answer just a few questions. So keep those questions coming in, because whatever we don't get to live, we will certainly follow up with that question and answer document. So let me just have a quick look. So the question is, does the regular hamburger menu, not using side navigation, auto sync so that the user can see where they are at the moment? So this was it was enhanced with this release. So it was available, but it wasn't available in HTML5 top navigation. So what we did is we wanted this to be available for both top nav and side nav now, so that when you start jumping around, particularly on that mobile, which I think it's helpful to see where you're going and where you've been in a table of contents. In Flare 2018, if you enable that, you're just going to get that automatically. It's nothing that you have to program. So hopefully that's helpful for everybody. So it wasn't available in previous versions, but in 2018 it is now. So a question here, is Elasticsearch restricted to your current project? Well, if you've got the Elasticsearch set up on your server, you can have several of your outputs published to that server. You can have several of your targets using that Elasticsearch service. So it's not necessarily limited to one particular project. I only had one that I was going off there, but you could use it for multiple projects and targets if you want to. Okay, so let's see. I've got some more questions. I'm looking for the ones that multiple people are asking. Oh, here's an interesting one. I have Analyzer installed separately. Should I install it? Well, that's a great question. If you haven't upgraded to Flare 2018 yet, keep it on your machine so that you can use it. But if you have upgraded to Flare 2018, I would recommend uninstalling it. It's all folded in Flare. Create some extra space on your machine. I can see that came up a couple times, so hopefully that's clear. Again, if you've got 2018, you've got Analyzer in there. You can uninstall it and create some space on your machine. You won't need it there anymore. So can you use Elasticsearch in a help system that's installed on a user system locally? Well, because Elasticsearch requires a web server and it needs access to those web services, it wouldn't necessarily be ideal to be working on a local system. So, I mean, you'd have to get those services installed on the local system. So that's not the most elegant way. It's probably most best used when you're publishing everything to a web server to serve up content. Oh, here's a great question. This came up a couple times. I want to address licensing. Is there a difference in pricing between the author licenses and the subject matter expert licenses in Central? Great question. Yes. So authors in Central, that's $79 per user per month. So if you want to invite somebody as a full author in Central, and that's generally going to be a Flare author, or anybody on your team that you want to invite to Central that needs access to all of the functional areas there in Central. We do have some users who may have members of QA or dev who are invited as authors into Central because they may want to see the outputs built, just privately from a staging situation. It's not public information, but maybe you just want to have your targets built nightly and you want to have dev or QA log into Central and see all of your targets built because maybe you're using Central as a staging server. You can invite those folks as authors. Subject matter experts, those who just have access to the reviews, that's $10 per user per month. So yes, the price is different. And so kind of to tag on that, to kind of tag on the licensing and the pricing thing, the question is, if I'm paying for 10 SME seats in Central, can I have more than 10 SMEs on my list, but only have 10 active at a given time? Yes. So if you've got 10 SME seats available in Central, you can invite 10 people as SMEs. Let's say some time goes by, somebody, moves off the project. You could remove that one person from your Central license and that would free up a seat. You could invite somebody else come in. Just because you've invited, 10 set people doesn't mean those are the 10 set people. People come and go from projects. So you could uninvite somebody and invite somebody else in to take up that seat. Okay, so can it happen that the file closes by author while a reviewer SME is in the middle of making a last minute post or submit edit? So that's a great question. In fact, I forgot to bring this up. The one thing about closing the file, remember we closed the file in Flare so that we can incorporate those changes back into the Flare interface. You'll want to do that for a couple of reasons. One, everybody submitted their changes and it's time to incorporate those changes. You may have somebody that you've invited to review a file. Maybe that person took an extended leave. Maybe you can't wait for that person to come back and submit those changes. You got to start working on what you have. An author can force the closure of a file, which means all you'll do is even though all the files haven't come back for review, at any point you can go into Flare, you can pull up that file reviews and look at what you've sent out, and you can force a closure on that file to start incorporating what you do have. So if you force the closure of a file and somebody's authoring it, then it's going to break that link. It's going to become read-only on that server. So it's not going to break anything, but you would be able to close that at any point in time. So let me just take a look at the time. I think I've got time for one more here. It's right at the top of the hour. Okay, so let me look at one other question. I think we've got some other things here on licensing. So here's a question. So in the central review process, all reviewers can see and respond to each other's comments right in the central pane. Yes, so if you're invited to review a file, then anybody who's invited to that review process can add comments and can respond to comments right in the central editor. And then on a second part of that question, what if the review is over, but a reviewer forgot to include an important comment? What would that require a brand new review? Well, if that topic is just in that submitted state, if it hasn't been closed out, and you'll know if you try to go to a file and try to edit it, it's going to tell you that it's read-only. You're not going to be able to do it. But if it's still in that open state and you forgot to do something, well, you can always go into the submitted tab in your reviews and make any last-minute edits. But once that file is closed, you won't be able to until it goes out for another review cycle. So that was a good question. So I think that's all we have time for today. We're at the top of the hour. This question window, it's going to be open for just a couple more minutes. So if you have some last minute questions, feel free to just jot them down. We're going to get back to everybody with all of these questions, so not to worry if we didn't get to yours. I do appreciate everybody for taking the time with me today. We went through a lot in this last 60 minutes, and I do hope it was helpful. Feel free to drop me a line. I got my email address up there. Would love to get your feedback on this and other things that maybe you want to see in the future, perhaps other webinar ideas. We'd love to take those into consideration. So thank you everybody again for joining me today. I hope you found it useful, and we hope to see you on the next webinar. Have a terrific rest of your week. Thanks again.